did. But I wanted to go through a presentation that I titled Get Ready, because that's really what we're asking everybody to do. It's up there, it's in the back as well. But with that said, it only takes one. Erik is going to talk about this, and Carl will talk about it as well. It only takes one storm. Everybody has seen the projections. I heard Carl earlier today say, don't worry about that. It doesn't make any sense anyway. The forecast doesn't make a difference, the long-term projections. But I do put that up there. You know, it went up in probability, and recently August 10th, and we've been through a few storms already. It's busy already. It's getting busier, and we're in that time of year where it's going to get busier and busier. But it only takes one storm, and we may not see that storm today. It may go somewhere else. But when it comes here, I want you all to be ready. So that's what I'm going to focus on, getting ready. And there's several simple things to do now. The first one is determine risk. I put up storm surge has potential to impact the entire county. Winds, tornadoes, all of the things that come with tropical weather can impact the county, but storm surge kills. That's the killing one. And if you're up on that 40-foot bluff somewhere and you're worried that the storm surge is never going to be up here, guess what? It might be all around you, and you might be an island on that 40-foot bluff. So storm surge is a problem out here, and the risk is across the entire county. So take a look at where you are, look at that risk around you, and get a good sense of it from a wind, water, and everything else perspective. I truly encourage you to have an evacuation plan, and whoever's on that's been here for 55 years, I hope you have an evacuation plan. I don't know if Mary Helen does, but I always encourage you to at least have an evacuation plan. Even if you don't execute it, have that plan just in case, because you haven't seen that storm yet that might make you get up and go. And have that plan. I've got a plan. My plan, I come here. I'm married. I got 3 grown kids. My wife's plan is she goes to them. And she gets out of town, and we get to work, and she takes care of them, and she gets going. Know where you're going to stay. If you don't know where you're going to go when you evacuate, figure that out now. And don't say, I'm going to a shelter. Figure out where you're going to go so that you can be comfortable wherever you end up. Because a shelter is not going to be it. A shelter is that place where you'll be safe, but you may not be comfortable. And it's not a place you really want to be. So I figure out where you're going to go, where you're going to stay. And if anybody have visitors come all summer long to them, go visit them. Get up and go and visit them and write that into your evacuation plan. Go visit your visitors because they're the ones that can, they're coming to see you. Go see them when you need to see them. But have that plan. Disaster supplies. Have a kit ready. I'm going to say have a kit ready that covers 3 to 5 days. If you live on Hatteras, and maybe longer, you want to have that kit for, you need to have more supplies. But there is a good chance you're going to be by yourself for a while if you don't evacuate. You might be by yourself for a while if you don't evacuate, because we may not be able to come and help you. We may not be able to get those services to you. So you have to have that disaster supply kit, not just for you, but your family and your pets. You're going to say, what do I put in that, Drew? I'll give you some resources as to what that should be in a minute. But have that disaster supply kit. And if you do evacuate, take it with you. Don't just leave it in the house. If you get in the car and go, take it with you, because you may need that where you're going to go, and especially if you end up in a shelter. Because at a shelter, you may not have a cot. You may not have a meal. You're going to have a safe roof over your head. So plan on going someplace other than a shelter. How many times did I say that so far, Erik? You might hear it a few more times. But get an insurance checkup. Make sure you got your insurance policies in place. I encourage everybody to have flood insurance, and now's the time to get it. It might be a little bit too late to get it, but make sure you have your insurance, because nobody's going to help you except yourself and your insurance initially. Strengthen your home is a big term, but make sure the doors close. Make sure the doors lock. Make sure the windows open and close. Make sure, take a look at if you can, get somebody to look at your roof. Make sure the roof's in good order. Make sure the yard's cleaned up. Make sure that picnic table's not going to get airborne and go somewhere else. Take a look around your home. Make sure everything's in good order. Now's the time to do that, because you might get up and go, and you want to make sure the door's locked. If the door's not locking, are you going to go? Probably not, but make sure everything's working. Make sure your home is in good order. This is an amazing one. To help your neighbor. I've been in this community for about 9 years now. This community takes care of each other, whether it's on Hatteras or in Duck. This community takes care of each other. They look after each other. But I ask you to look out for your neighbors, help each other. And if you know anybody who has special medical needs or special needs, I'll share some information about that as to how they can get a little bit of help as well when I show a video here in a minute. The last one is, complete a written hurricane plan. Why do I encourage you to write it down? Because guess what? If you're under pressure, if you're just going, oh my God, we got to go, what are we going to do? To break out the written down plan. This is what we're going to do. This is where we're going to go. This is how we're going to communicate. You're not under stress if you're doing it today after you leave us, but you might be under stress after Eric's hit the hurricane watch and warning button on the computer and we're getting ready to have to do an evacuation. So write it down. Several simple things to try to do now. We get asked a lot of questions about emergency decision making in our county. And we put this video together. It's about 5 minutes long. If you've seen it already, I apologize for having you see it again. If you recognize the faces in here and say, well, that guy's no longer the mayor, he's probably not because it's a couple years old and we've had some changes. But I'm going to play the video and give you some idea of what we do when we go to make emergency decisions here in Dare County. So with that.
On this delicate sandbar, emergencies happen every day and tough decisions need to be made. Most days, those decisions are made by first responders who take action and solve problems quickly using the authority and resources they have at hand. But what happens when an emergency exceeds their capabilities or has the potential to bring widespread impacts to a town or across the entire county? Impacts could come from anywhere: a storm, a man-made disaster, a public health crisis, an act of terror, civil unrest, or a chemical release, just to name a few. When we are facing widespread or severe damage, injury, or loss of life or property, how are decisions made to keep our community safe?
In North Carolina, counties and towns operate under authority granted by state statute. For emergencies, North Carolina General Statute 166A, the Emergency Management Act, provides the authority and responsibility that local governments have to prevent, prepare for, respond to, and recover from emergencies. The Act defines an emergency as an occurrence or imminent threat of widespread or severe damage, injury, or loss of life or property resulting from any natural or man-made threat or hazard. Counties are responsible for emergency management efforts to include coordinating activities with towns. To meet this responsibility, counties and towns establish emergency management agencies, expend funds to keep people and property safe, implement emergency management plans, provide emergency management response resources, and declare local states of emergency when needed to ensure public health and safety. The county or a town will declare a local state of emergency when they believe an emergency exists or is imminent. In Dare, each town in the county have an emergency management ordinance that designates the authority to declare a state of emergency to the town's mayor, the chair of the Board of Commissioners, or their designee. While these individuals have the authority to declare a state of emergency and impose prohibitions and restrictions, they need the best information available to make the best possible decisions to protect public health and safety.
When an emergency has occurred or is looming on the horizon, we turn to our emergency operations plan. The plan, required by Chapter 92 of the Dare County Code, provides a framework that brings decision makers, subject matter experts, and others together to share information and coordinate decision making. In the plan, we use the term senior leaders to identify decision makers who have the authority to declare a local state of emergency and impose restrictions and prohibitions. The term is also used to describe others who have authorities they can use independently to protect public health and safety. The National Park Superintendent and the Dare County Sheriff have authorities outside of the Emergency Management Act, making them key senior leaders who routinely collaborate and coordinate actions with the chair of the Dare County Board of Commissioners and our town mayors.
When challenges arise and actions are needed to ensure public health and safety, our senior leaders, along with other key personnel, come together. They meet either in person or virtually and receive briefings from subject matter experts on what to expect, ways to mitigate impacts, and how best to protect our community.
While we always focus on ensuring public health and safety, we never set aside how actions taken impact business and community activities. Often, senior leaders will reach out to key partners and community leaders to gather information and keep them informed as tough decisions are made. Depending on the circumstance, a state of emergency may be declared. While no one wants to impose prohibitions and restrictions, we know that without them, those we serve may be put unnecessarily in harm's way. While each senior leader has independent authority, either from the Emergency Management Act or other statutes that allows them to take actions on their own, they always strive to reach consensus. Once decisions are made, they are captured in a written state of emergency declaration that is quickly communicated to the public and implemented. As the situation changes, decision makers are briefed, and if changes are needed, the declaration is updated with prohibitions and restrictions being added or removed. These efforts continue until the emergency no longer threatens public health and safety. When an emergency crosses jurisdictional boundaries or is anticipated to bring widespread impacts to the county, a state of emergency may be signed by the chair of the Board of Commissioners, outlining all decisions and detailing who provided consent. Often towns will issue their own declaration signed by their mayor. At times, a declaration may be issued by just the county or a town.
Just like the everyday decisions made by a lifeguard, a law enforcement officer, a firefighter, an emergency medical technician, or a 911 call taker to save lives and protect property, senior leaders are empowered to take action to ensure public health and safety when our community is facing widespread or severe damage, injury, or loss of life or property. These are tough decisions made with the best information available from subject matter experts and key stakeholders that lead to actions that protect our community until emergency conditions are no longer present.
Well, I hope you found that informational. We put it together to try to explain, and if there are people on virtually with us or people here that are living in another county, whether it's Currituck or Hyde or Turtle, the processes don't change much. The laws are the same, the processes are the same, but it does, and it's really great to fill this room up. I'm going to stand over here, so if I drift off, tell me to talk louder over there. I don't want to block everybody with my back, but really great to fill the room up. But emergency decision making, that's how it's done in Dare County and across the state of North Carolina. So we talk about evacuation, and do you know if you're in an evacuation zone where you live in Dare County? If you don't, just start going like this, because you are. We only have two of them. Hatteras Island is Zone A. The rest of the county is Zone B. You can, if you wanted to, you can go to knowyourzonenc.gov and put your address in there, and it'll tell you the same thing. But in Dare County, we have two evacuation zones, Zone A and B, Hatteras Island, everywhere else. So if you live in Dare County, you live in an evacuation zone. I talked a little bit about this earlier, about having that evacuation plan, and I just want to highlight it again. Having that plan is so important. That life-threatening storm surge, flooding, and high water, it got to take priority over what's in your mind. Don't be worried about, I got to go that far away to get to a safe spot, because if you don't go that far away, you may be living in storm surge, and you may be by yourself for an extended period of time. Let that take priority in your decision making and having that plan. When we get the evacuation order at issue, get to it. Please don't linger. Get on the road and get going. We're not doing it just because we want to do it. We're doing it because we need to do it. We need to get you out and moving. Take that emergency kit with you. I think I said it 3 times already. No safe place to go. Shelter, they're going to be announced. They're going to be opened. But have a plan to go someplace other than a shelter. Please have a plan to go someplace other than a shelter. But if you need a place to go and that plan fell through, you can find the shelter locations. And if you need transportation, or you know somebody who needs transportation because they don't have the means to get up and go on their own, please have them call us. We put that information out in our media releases. We get the information out as best we can. But you may know somebody that's not listening to what we're saying. So if somebody needs to get somewhere, please let them know to call us. And that number is our number. It rings all the time here, and we answer it. So I hope last time I say it now, make plans now that don't include a shelter. So I just wanted to drive that home, okay? But have that plan. This is, I said I'd give you some resources, what do you need in those disaster kits that you're going to take with you. Our state has readync.gov. Great resources on there from a state perspective on what you can do to prepare for, respond to, and recover from things. The mobile version will show you where open shelters are. So if you're in the car, you have that connectivity, you can open up the mobile version. It'll show you where the shelters are. Don't go to a shelter, go to your friend's house. But readync.gov. There's also the FEMA app. There's other things, but this one is tailored to the state. And I just encourage you to think about the states talking about what takes place in our state. readync.gov. I mentioned earlier helping our neighbors. I do encourage you to check on your neighbors. We're in an amazing community where everybody helps each other. But we do have a program in place that's run by our social services department. This is a relatively new video, so I'm going to go ahead and play this one for you. It talks about our special medical needs registry.
I'm Chuck Lysette, Director of the Division of Social Services of the Dare County Department of Health and Human Services. The Special Medical Needs Registry is an emergency preparedness tool used by Dare County for communicating with medically fragile individuals, for pre-event planning, and if needed, for evacuating before a disaster. Our Adult Services Unit oversees the registry for Dare County residents. Who should register for the Special Medical Needs Registry? Dare County residents who would need assistance with medical care and/or personal care during an evacuation for a hurricane, or those who may need assistance while they are sheltering during a storm due to their physical and/or mental impairments, should register. The registry is not just for the elderly population in Dare County. It's not just for social services clients. Participation in the registry is voluntary, and all information will be kept private and confidential. Also, anyone who uses oxygen and/or receives dialysis is strongly encouraged to register. These are two critical needs that can be impacted if access is limited to where the person lives after the event, or if power is lost during the event. The Special Medical Needs Registry is important because Dare County and local municipality officials also need to know where the area's most vulnerable residents are so that they can contact them quickly before and after an emergency occurs. Once you register, you will remain on the registry and do not need to re-register each year. Each May, a social worker will contact you to verify and update your information. Each time an event is approaching, you will be contacted. Based on the information you provided, we will work with you to make sure you are ready to implement your evacuation plan. We will remind you to take your essential medications and medical supplies, medical equipment, any special foods you require, important documents, and a driver's license or other identification. If an evacuation is ordered, we can assist with transportation to a shelter. Individuals who require a dialysis or oxygen will be evacuated to a location in proximity to these services. As a reminder, plan ahead for disasters, as resources can be very limited during an emergency. In addition to registering for the special medical needs, it is important that you take a few minutes to register for OBX alerts and create a smart 911 profile. By completing both, you will receive public safety and routine alerts and notifications from local officials, and we will be able to review your potential needs as we prepare for a storm. Finally, develop your evacuation plan now, including where you will go and how you will get there. If you or someone you know may benefit from being added to the Special Medical Needs Registry, please visit darenc.gov/special needs or call the Division of Social Services at 475-5500.
I know you may not need it, but you may need it sometime in the future. I may need it sometime in the future, but it's that helping hand that's there for you just in case. And I got to tell you, we're really lucky in Dare County to have an engaged and proactive social services director and a staff that are just angels in our county. They man our call center when we activate our EOC. We're just lucky to have our social services department, and they do a great job with this. They take care of the people. They take care of everybody. So keep that in mind. We've hit OBX alerts a couple times, but I know Erik and Carl say the same thing. Know your trusted sources of information. Does everybody believe what they see on social media? If you do, this is probably streaming somewhere. Somebody's probably tweeting already, or Xing already, whatever it might be. But know your trusted sources of information. We're lucky enough to have I forgot your name, but WITN meteorologist with us today here for the forum. Thanks for staying after this morning, but he's with us. But they are a trusted source of information. We trust the media. They get the information out. They do those things. The Weather Service does. OBX Alerts does. Our media outlets do. The National Hurricane Center. Know your trusted sources of information. I'm going to just ask, how many people are signed up for OBX alerts? Just, man, that's good. Let's get us, after you leave here, let's get you all signed up, okay? Let's get that, get that done. How many people have government alerts turned on their phone? Let's get all those hands up. And if you don't trust the government, don't trust the government. But if you want to know that your house is getting ready to get hit by a tidal wave or a tornado, turn the alerts on, because that's how they get them to you. You can complete your full profile on obxalerts.com. And I'm just going to play this video. I've been talking, the video speaks to it pretty well in a couple minutes.
Whether you live in Dare County, own property here, or just like to visit the area, it's essential to have convenient and reliable access to emergency alerts and other important notifications that may affect you, your family, or your property. That's why Dare County and its 6 municipalities use OBX Alerts, which is powered by a mass notification service provider called Rave Mobile Safety to deliver emergency alerts and routine notifications. OBX Alerts is a subscriber-based system that is used to share a wide array of county and town alerts and routine notifications with individuals who sign up to receive them. Subscribers can choose which type of alerts and notifications they would like to receive from Dare County, as well as the towns of Duck, Southern Shores, Kitty Hawk, Kill Devil Hills, Nags Head, and Manteo. There are 2 main types of alerts that subscribers can sign up to receive: emergency alerts and routine notifications, making it easy to opt in to only receive the notifications that are relevant to you and that affect the areas where you live, work, or enjoy your vacation. Both Dare County, as well as each of the 6 towns, use OBX Alerts to send emergency alerts. The types of emergency alerts that OBX Alert subscribers can sign up to receive include severe weather watches and warnings in their area that have been issued by the National Weather Service, evacuation orders, information regarding road conditions and closures, as well as other public safety concerns. OBX Alert subscribers who sign up to receive routine notifications can expect to receive information about delays or disruptions to water delivery, schedule changes or cancellations for trash collection services, as well as meeting reminders, updates, and other items of general interest. Dare County currently only utilizes the OBX Alerts platform to send emergency alerts rather than routine notifications. In addition to having the ability to choose which types of information they would like to receive, subscribers can also choose how they prefer to receive it. When signing up for OBX Alerts and customizing your profile, you can choose to receive the types of emergency alerts and routine notifications you've selected by text, email, or an automated phone call. For those who only want county-wide emergency alerts that are issued by Dare County Emergency Management and received as a text message, you can simply text Dare Emergency Alerts to 77295. The emergency alerts and notifications that are sent out via the OBX Alerts platform are developed and disseminated by public safety officials, as well as various staff members employed by Dare County and its 6 municipalities. Local, state, and federal public safety officials may also utilize FEMA's Integrated Public Alert and Warning System, which is known as IPAWS, to send authenticated emergency and life-saving information to the public through mobile phones using wireless emergency alerts. These type of alerts range from information regarding extreme weather and natural and human-made disasters to active shooters and Amber Alerts. In order to receive these types of important alerts, Dare County Emergency Management encourages everyone to ensure that all government alert notifications are enabled on your mobile devices. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about OBX Alerts and why it's so important to sign up to receive these emergency alerts and routine notifications if you live, work, or vacation in Dare County. For more information, including a video that provides detailed instructions for how to sign up to receive alerts and notifications, please visit www.obxalerts.com.
So we get to ask questions. Why am I getting an alert from town of Manteo when I live in Duck? It's not something we did. It's probably something you did when you set up your profile. So you can go back in and update your profile and turn Manteo off if you live in Duck, or you can turn other ones on. So we encourage everybody to visit their profile every so often to do that. Did everybody get the tsunami test warning that went out? We get a lot of questions about that too. I'm going to thank Erik and the Weather Service for doing that. Weather alerts that come out from the National Weather Service, if you select the watches and warnings list on when you do your profile, they come from the Weather Service automatically to OBX alerts and delivered to you in the methods you want to get them. We have no touch on those. The Weather Service issues them and they get delivered. It's a processing system that we were able to offer to get that information to you from the Weather Service. So I'm not trying to say anything about the Weather Service. They're great, but the tsunami one got us a little bit going. But I know they're working on those corrective actions. So are we. So anybody who was getting those, you're now going to see that if you're signed up for those things in the future, when they're issued, it's not going to say OBX alerts any longer. It's going to say NWS alert. We worked that out a little bit with our service provider. Enough on that. OBX alerts, if you're not signed up, please do. Make sure those government alerts notifications are turned on. We get this asked a lot. What about reentry? How many of you all are Dare County residents with a driver's license that has a Dare County address on it? You guys are pretty much set with your reentry permit. If you want to get one to put in your windshield, you go online and do it, and you'll get one issued. That may help you get through the checkpoint quicker because the law enforcement agencies out there, they're going to be looking at both. They may verify who you are, but if you have your Dare County driver's license with that address on it, you're good. It does start our recovery process, and it is driven by public safety. When you come back, there still may be hazards out here. We may not be up and running like it was before you left. We may have power outages, we may have other things still going on, but it does start our recovery process. And there may be prohibitions and restrictions still in place. We may have opened the county up to start bringing people back, but there may be curfews, there may be other things still going on. I put that in bold because this can take a long time. Mary Helen, how long does it take to get Hatteras Island back up and running after a real disaster to strike? It takes a long time because we want to bring people back when it's safe. We got to get the workforce back. We got to get government going again. It could take a long time, but it does allow us to have a safe and orderly return, and we have those priorities laid out. So if you live in Dare County, you're a permanent resident. If you're a non-resident property owner online asking about it, non-resident property owners have priority 3, and then the general public is priority 4. And we issue RLA permits now. We've been doing it online since about 2017. So when I get that phone call, well, you didn't mail me my reentry permit, I've got this one that hangs in the window. George Ellis knows. George used to work for us. She's back here with us. We stopped doing that a long time ago. So the answer is we do them online, and it's not I think it's not a hard process, but we do it online. What about reentry? That's what about reentry. All right. I always talk about ocean hazards as we talk about tropical events. We have a high level of rip currents right now. Probably Erik will get into a little bit more. Next week, we're probably going to have a consistent high level of rip currents because the ocean's starting to churn and the storms are out there. But anybody can get information on ocean hazards at lovethebeachrespecttheocean.com, and they can get alerts from us by just texting OBX beach conditions to 77295. If you got friends and relatives coming and they're from Ohio and they swim in the pool back home, get them on lovethebeachrespecttheocean.com so they can learn a little bit about the hazards in the ocean. It's a beautiful natural environment, but it isn't the lake in Pennsylvania. It's not the pool in Virginia. It's the natural ocean. A lot of information we try to share with everybody. How deep is it going to get? You know, we're going to talk, Erik's going to go into storm surge forecasting and whatnot, but the state of North Carolina manages the flood inundation mapping and alerting network. It's got gauges across the state, and we do have, this is an example of the gauge that's down in at the Pheasant Center in Buxton as to what it did during Dorian, the rise and fall. And people can sign up and get alerts from those gauges that'll tell them the water's coming up and the water's going down. So it is a way that the state has a system in place to let you know of changing water levels and how deep it might get. It's not a forecasting product, it's an alerting product, but it does give you the ability to see that. We have Feynman gauges. It says new in 2022. The red ones the county paid for to get installed. A couple of them aren't working. We have one on the Avon Pier and the Rodanthe Pier that aren't working right now. We're working with the state to get them fixed, but we do have a lot of gauges out and about the county, and most of the communities in the county now have a gauge that's covering it to give you that information. And then how deep will it get? Has anybody seen one of these yet? Yeah, we're pretty proud of them. You know, we think they're a pretty good representation. If you're standing next to or near that 12-foot pole, it's going to tell you how deep it's going to get. We got 27 of them around the county. So if the stars show you where they are, it's good to see that people have seen them. There's an interpretive display next to it that explains what storm surge is, but it's really a good display. You know, I say we think it's a best practice, and I say that with some certainty because the National Hurricane Center asked us to send them one, and it's now a Dare County storm surge pole posted in front of the National Hurricane Center. So we see it as a best practice, and it's a good way to describe to your friends and family, 12 feet, oh my God, I gotta go. 6 feet, I really should go. 1 to 3, I need to go because they told me to evacuate, but it might be okay. But ma'am, you had your hand up?
The 3 in Manteo, where are they?
Well, there's one in Manteo right now. It's over by the boat ramp. There's one that they're getting ready to install in Manteo. It's not in yet. It's going to be over by, they just finished the pump house over by the Creef Park. There's one at the other one is probably showing up in Manteo, and here is over at the aquarium. We put one at the aquarium because we get a lot, you know, today's the day. There's probably a lot of people across the street probably giving a lot of traffic. We get a lot of visitors to the aquarium, and if those visitors know how deep it's going to get, it helps us encourage them to get going. But that's our storm surge pole awareness project out there. So I'm going to get near the end of my part, but I'm just going to show you 2 videos.
The online people can't hear the videos. Online video audio.
I apologize for the online video piece. I'm going to blame Erik for that, but we'll try to let you watch it when we do it, but I'm going to play him anyway.
You can't realize what your house is like when it starts flooding. Everything floats. You can't get down the hallway. You got to fight to get where you're going. Put the doors closed so we can't hold it. I don't know how long we held it. I don't know how high this water's going to get. But we're going to be trapped like the rats in here. I saw death outside that door.
Tom is a hurricane survivor from Hurricane Michael in Florida a couple of years ago. And Debbie, she'll tell you about herself.
When the word came out that there was mandatory evacuation, we evacuated. We might not be here if we had. I just feel numb. I don't think I've processed it yet.
And that was also Michael in Florida, and I think they recorded some pretty high storm surge down there, probably higher than we hope we ever see, and probably higher than the poles we have. But it doesn't, once you get above 12 feet, it doesn't really make much of a difference how much deeper it gets, but damage is done by storm surge. So with that, my last slide is to remind you to get ready. Sign up for OBX alerts if you haven't already. Make sure those government notifications are turned on. Run from the water, hide from the wind. And we do have our guide in front of you. There's a lot of good information in there. It's also available on the website as a PDF. And I really want to thank you for filling the room up today. And I apologize to the folks online for not being able to hear the videos, but it will be played later on and redone, and you can listen to them then. But thank you all for coming. I'm going to hand it off to Erik. If you have a question for now, write it down and ask me later, but I'm going to let Erik run through because he may answer your question you have for me, and I'd rather him answer it than me answer it because he's the weather guy. And if it's a weather question, he's got the right answers. Erik, thank you.
Thank you very much, Drew. So I know Drew blamed us for a lot of things, but Carl Barnes and I came up here from the Weather Service in Morehead City, and we did bring the weather today. The very nice. So I just want to let you know that. So for the online audience, those videos that Drew played, they have worked before, so I do apologize for that. What we will do is follow up with links afterwards. I have all your email addresses. We will do links to the videos. Mr. Casey's recording this. There's a bunch of ways you're going to see this afterwards. So apologize that the videos did not work this time, but we will certainly get those to you as soon as we can. So my name is Erik Heden. I am a meteorologist with the Weather Service down in Morehead City. We cover eastern North Carolina. We're going to show you that in a second. I'm joined by my colleague Carl Barnes, also a meteorologist down at the Weather Service in Morehead City. Drew gave you a lot of fantastic information. This county is one of the best, not just in the state, but in the country. You're very lucky with the amount of information and resources you have. So really appreciate you sharing that and having us up here. If you get anything out of our presentation, it's those three things at the top, not Carl and Erik down at the bottom, or that we're at Morehead City, or the year's 2023. Focus on the impacts. Impacts, impacts, impacts. Water's what kills. Do not focus on just the category. If you get nothing else from our presentation, that's what we want you to get out of it. That's what it's all about. It's nothing that's changed through the years. We're trying to improve our messaging, and those are the three messages we want you to remember. So we mentioned that Carl and I are down from the Morehead City area. That red dot is in Newport, North Carolina. It's beautiful down there. If you've ever been to Beaufort or Emerald Isle, Atlantic Beach, that's the area that our office is near. We cover that yellow shaded area, so roughly the eastern quarter of North Carolina. Certainly includes Dare County, but also places like Greenville down through Jacksonville, and everywhere in between. If you're a boater, you like to get out on the water, we also do forecasts out to 20 nautical miles, so we're not just a land-based agency. We issue watches, warnings, and forecasts for those areas. The single best way to get information from us is our website. I notice a lot of you have smartphones today. Mr. Carl can help you if you're not sure how to do this, but if you take your phone out and you take a picture or try to scan that little funky looking thing in the upper right is a QR code, you will be taken to that website. So if you just scan that up at the top, you will be able to save off our website. I really suggest that you do that. It's a good resource for you to have. How do you get this thing off, Drew? There we go. So that has all our information on the website, things like forecasts. You enter your city or zip code. You can click on the map. There's a ton of information on this website. It can be information overload, so I tell people to zoom into your town, bookmark it, and then mess around with it. Look at the data. There's a lot of resources. I will direct you to some of them. I know some of you are still scanning it, but we'll continue to have that QR code at the top. And if you can't get it, like it happens to me sometimes, just see us afterwards. Carl and I will make sure you get that resource. It's really the best way to put it on your phone. This QR code also goes to our website. There is a tropical version of the page. If you scroll down to the bottom, you can get it access to that as well. The advantage of this is anything you see on the Hurricane Center website, which is also a good website, and we'll cover. The forecast cone, the outlook, storm surge, it's all on our website as well. In addition, on this website are our tropical briefings. When there's severe weather, not just hurricanes, but winter weather, severe weather, anything significant weather-wise, we do a PDF briefing for the community that you can get that information from. So again, that's on our website there, along with the QR code. Social media is a great way to spread lots of information, and we like to use it for good information. We did that tweet the morning of Florence. I know you all were not as impacted by Florence as we were. We got calls, should I come back to the area? It was a 4, now it's only a 1. Should I not worry about it? We had a meeting earlier this morning, and we talked about language. Down toward the bottom, I did this tweet, used the word catastrophic flooding. Carl and I get paid the same today to talk about what could happen in the future as we do during Florence. So we get paid the same. It doesn't matter to us. So when we use strong language, it's because we care about you and our community. We don't get any more money out of it. We don't get any more revenue. We use language like that because we want to get your attention and we mean it. So when we say things like that, it's extremely important that you listen. So with Florence, our big concern was rainfall, flooding, and surge, and that's not related to category, as we'll explain. So wherever you're on social media, we use that as our megaphone to wave our hands all around and say, pay attention to this. Just search NWS Morehead City to get that information. On the right is an example of the YouTube briefings that we give to Drew and the folks in the county. You can view those as well. So, at the very beginning, I asked, how long had you lived in this area? Because we have different experience levels. Some of us have just moved here and don't realize this. So my question is our area vulnerable to storms? Are we? So we do get storms? So I've heard. So this is a radius, I think it's just over 100 miles. The center point is Morehead City, so that includes all of the Outer Banks, and these are all of the Category 4 storms we've had since 1842. The reason why I like to start with this is we have had some Category 4 storms. Notice those unnamed storms in the 40s, 1944 there. So when you hear storms like Matthew and Irene and Isabel, very, very impactful storms, but it has been worse before. We have had bad storms before, and they will continue to happen. So don't just think about recent memory, think about even before you have been here. You'll notice as we decrease the number, Category 3 a lot. Again, Ione in 1955, if you look at that track right to the west of Cape Lookout, it put the whole Pamlico Sound and the Outer Banks on the right side of the storm. So we talk a lot about Dorian and Isabel and, recent in the last 20, 25-year storms, but we've had storms for a long, long time here that have had historic impacts. Category 2 storms, even more, and Category 1 storms, kind of hard to see where we are in eastern North Carolina. So if you didn't realize, yes, we are extremely vulnerable to storms, and in recorded history, and even before that we stick out into the ocean, so we are extremely vulnerable. We are actually the most vulnerable stretch of coastline in the entire United States. So let me say that again. We are the most vulnerable stretch of coastline in the entire United States. So Mr. Carl is going to talk a little bit about the season. The hurricane season traditionally is June 1st through the fall, and he's going to talk about how we're an equal opportunity for storms. We can get them a long season, and there's something happening, Carl, the last week or so. Man, I don't know. I know I went to school for meteorology, but it seems like we're getting more active. What's going on? Why are we? Is this normal?
Yeah, so we call this our campfire map. I'm not sure if you can figure out why, but it's generally, the higher the campfire is, the more active the Atlantic normally is. So you can see where we're at there in late August. We are on a steep upslope for normal Atlantic activity. We're getting into a time of year where we typically see across the Atlantic more storms. Our water temperatures are very, very warm right now. That's kind of the thing that's most driving our higher than normal hurricane outlook that Drew showed earlier. So we are, that's certainly a reason for concern. There's a lot of things that go into the development of hurricanes. This does cover the entirety of the Atlantic, so this isn't necessarily here. But it is worth noting that, now is getting into the peak of hurricane season, especially over the next 6 weeks. We don't have anything directly expected to impact us in the immediate future. So now is the perfect time to make sure that you're making all these preparations that we're talking about, because we are coming into this extremely active time. And you can see we're coming up to where we saw just within the last couple of years, Dorian and Florence, late August, early September. And even going back 20 or 30 years, a lot of, not only is it more active this time of year, this is our most likely time of year to get extremely impactful storms. So now, before we have a storm that's bearing down on us and you have all these other stressors and everything, now is the perfect time to put all these preparations, or make all these preparations that we're talking about. All right, so where can you go to figure out what to prepare for? Drew perfectly outlined a lot of the main information I'm about to hit on. So I'm not going to go into too much more detail about that, but it is worth noting that we do have some higher level things available on our website that really, wherever you're at, we encourage you to maybe start there, and then Dare County has good information. Hyde has their own information. Currituck, similar but also very specific. So maybe start at this higher level and then work down to your local information at your county. So weather.gov/Morehead City/hurricane prep. That'll be on the next several slides. Again, we have a QR code. Great place to start to see just the basic bullets of what do I need to be thinking about. Do you understand your risk? Like Drew said, all of the Outer Banks has a storm surge risk. Most of eastern North Carolina has a storm surge risk. Make sure you understand what your risk is. Make sure you understand what your evacuation zone is. Prepare. So now is the perfect time. Like Drew said, what is your evacuation plan? I know inland. I get that. But have an actual plan. Like he said, those people, I have family in Virginia. We have family in Charlotte. We have family in Greensboro. They don't hesitate to come visit me. So as soon as that storm's coming, unfortunately, we can't leave. But my wife, my daughter are headed to Greensboro or headed to Charlotte, and they don't get to object to it. They're gonna have visitors for a few days, because that's where I'm sending my family. And now is the time to be thinking about and going ahead and talk to those people. Make sure, hey, is this okay? We would like this to be our plan. Is it okay that we write you down? You don't want to do that when there's a storm 3 days away. You want to do it now. At least 3-day supply. We don't like that. That's kind of the national standard, at least 3-day supply. We usually say 7 days is better. If you live on Hatteras Island or somewhere that's even more vulnerable, you're probably going to want to up that even more. Okay, at least 7 days for most examples. But you have to understand, if you live in an area that could get cut off, you need to make sure that you have plenty of supplies, because help, it might be a little bit delayed, or there might be challenges with it getting to you. Disaster supply kit: basics, food, water, batteries, charger, radio, cash. This is a good time of year to maybe keep your car mostly gassed up. I try not to get below half tank, because for anyone who remembers recent storms over the last couple of years, gas really becomes a commodity. After the storm, without internet, guess what? You can't use a credit card. So you got to have cash. You got to be kind of thinking about these things now while you have time to really sit down and think it out. And don't forget about pets. If you have medications, go ahead and get extended supply, especially during hurricane season. Get an extended supply to always have with you. All right, when the storm threatens. So this is when stress starts to increase. It's been very clearly shown, as you become more stressed out, your level to, or your ability to kind of comprehend and take in new information dramatically decreases. So now's the time to be thinking about the preparations so that you can be ready when it arrives. So what do you got to be ready for? Protect your home. You can be able to cover windows, secure doors, loose items, sheltering option. Again, considering your pets. Check on your neighbors. A lot of stuff that Drew hit on, I really want to reinforce it, because now is the time to be thinking about that. All right, so let's take a look at what we got going on now. National Hurricane Center, they issue the tropical weather outlook 4 times a day, 8 a.m. and p.m., 2 a.m. and p.m. And we have been more active over the last several days. Right now we have several areas that we're monitoring. We do currently have Tropical Storm Franklin, which is over Hispaniola. We'll get more into that in a second. But this is a great starting point just for keeping an eye, making sure what we call situational awareness, making sure that you're pretty aware of what's going on, how active the Atlantic is, what the potential is. This will highlight any potential development over the next 7 days. It was extended this year from 5 days to 7 days. So just keep an eye on this, weather.gov/Morehead City/tropical. If you go there, this will be right on the front page of that. Good thing just to keep an eye on, again, maintaining your own situational awareness. And taking a look at Franklin, once we do have a storm that develops, the National Hurricane Center will begin producing these graphics and giving out a lot more information specifically for that storm. So this is what we currently have for Franklin. No. Sorry, no. Sorry. That's next slide. Sorry. That's next slide. Yeah. Next slide. All right. So this is one of the graphics that you will see come out for storms from the National Hurricane Center. This is the cone graphic, cone of uncertainty, forecast cone. Raise your hand if you haven't seen this before. Okay, good. So this is probably the most used, both by the news, by us, by the Weather Channel, by anyone.
Can I ask them a quick question? So you said you've all seen this graphic? Every single one of you? So we're all real good super users of this. This is from Ian last year. Look really carefully. Tell me how much rain is on this. Can you see this graph? I can see it real well. How much rain is on this graphic? Does it tell you about rain? No. All right. How about storm surge? I know Carl and I are going to be talking about there's a lot of storm surge. How much storm surge is on this graphic? I can't see it. So you're telling me I don't know how much rain is going to fall. I don't know how much storm surge there's going to be. Okay, just hold that thought. Go ahead. So what does it show me? What does this show?
Yeah, so this is National Hurricane Center produces this once a storm forms. So the key for this graphic is this is the expected track of the center point of the storm with reasonable error. So the most likely track over the next 5 days. So the point of emphasis here is really that it is only the center point of the storm. It is also the most likely intensity, but does not account for everything. So if it stays a little bit longer over land, there's a lot of things that can impact intensity of a storm, maybe going over a little bit cooler water. This doesn't show you any of that information about different intensity estimates, different uncertainties. It also doesn't show you the wind field for a storm, doesn't show you how much rain is going to fall, where the storm surge is going to occur. This only speaks to the center of the storm. The only thing that you should be getting out of this graphic is what is the general direction of motion of the storm and what is the general expected intensity. So for this example, this was from Ian, expecting it to maintain, you can kind of see the M's in the over the next couple of forecast points. That would be indicative of major hurricanes. So essentially looking at this, you would say Ian is currently a little bit north of Cuba, generally expected to track north to northeastward, generally expected to remain a major hurricane, at least until it reaches Florida. That's it. There's a lot of other misinformation that can be derived from this, or that people can think that they're seeing from this. For example, the biggest one we get is the cone represents the areas that are going to receive the impact. Not the case. Not at all the case. Impacts will be felt well outside of the cone. And closer in time, you see the cone is much smaller. Further out in time, it's larger. But in this example, Ian, we know that impacts were felt well outside of where the cone is in southwest Florida here. That is just the center point of the storm. Not even the eye wall of the storm, just the center point of the storm. So be very careful in how you use this graphic. Understand all of the impacts, and Erik will get more into how we communicate all of those impacts. This cone graphic does not tell the full story.
What model do you use? Or is this a compilation?
Great question. We use all of the models. We understand the models. We understand what their normal bias is. Maybe there's a model that's usually too far right 4 or 5 days out. The best forecast and what this cone shows is the National Hurricane Center forecast. Those people do it for a living. They spend all year, even off of hurricane season, studying the models, studying the storms. They live, eat, breathe, sleep hurricanes all the time. The forecast coming from the National Hurricane Center will always be the best forecast. Again, getting information from reputable sources, especially on social media, you might see people posting, this is the new European model, this is the new GFS model. The European did great last storm. Doesn't mean it's going to do good this storm. Be very hesitant about any information that you see going around from just one model. The National Hurricane Center forecast is the best forecast. It always will be. It's not always going to be perfect, but it will always be the best forecast. All right, now we can get there. Now we're ready for it. Tropical Storm Franklin, currently going over Hispaniola. This track, anyone want to summarize what this track is? What you get from this graphic now that we just went over it? Yeah, right. I love that no one said, oh, it's going to be a bunch of rain here in a couple days. All right, so we've got a general, currently over Hispaniola, a general northward motion, potentially stalling out in a few days or slowing way down. And not much intensification is expected, at least within the next couple days. Again, that's about all you can get from this graphic. What do we know? Even hurricanes that stay way out in the ocean can generate large swell, strong rip currents here locally. So we, as a National Weather Service, Dare County, we already have our antenna up. We're already preparing to start messaging that we have the potential for a really enhanced rip current risk basically through next week. From the current track, the swell might start to arrive sometime Monday. We'll get into those details more, but this is the kind of thing we're looking at where even these, you might hear them called like fish storms, they stay out to the ocean, they can still pose a risk. We've seen storms like this in the past that have resulted in multiple fatalities along the East Coast, even though it's bright and sunny the whole time, from rip currents, from coastal marine hazards, those kind of things. So right now, This is the current 5-day forecast. Something else to hit on, don't anchor. What is anchoring? When you're in a boat, maybe anchoring is a good thing. When you're looking at the forecast, anchoring is a bad thing. Anchoring is where you look at this forecast and then don't look at anything else for the next 5 days and you say, this is what's going to happen. Forecasts change, so you need to continue to monitor it. Right now, we have the expected most likely forecast probably staying off the southeast coast at least through the next 5 days. That can change. This is just the most likely forecast, but the scenario can continue to change, especially with storms like this that slow down, stall, redirect, something like that. So just something you want to continue to monitor the forecast. Probably every day this time of year, I would look at least the tropical weather outlook, look at individual hurricane forecasts at least every day. Because if you anchor on a forecast and that forecast changes, you can get caught off guard. Yes, sir. Okay.
Why does a hurricane even start? Why does it start over Africa? Why does it start somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we can go in more to this afterwards if you want. We can go way down that road. In general, there's 5 ingredients that a hurricane needs. Generally favorable winds, generally some kind of initial disturbance, warm water, and lots of moisture in the atmosphere. And then it also needs essentially like a way to kind of maintain itself energetically. And we can get more into that, but there are several ingredients that are only found in the tropics. So that's why they all form in the tropics or in somewhere that's here in the summertime. It's like the tropics. So that's why they form there, but then they can move to higher latitudes. All right, storm surge products. So obviously here we're very concerned about storm surge. We have several products that we put out. We can actually start in the middle, so that's the peak storm surge forecast. That's produced by the National Hurricane Center. The National Hurricane Center is focused on the storm as a whole. They're focused on following the storm and kind of generally what kind of impacts it's going to produce on the large scale. So this is something that you would see coming from the National Hurricane Center. It gives projected storm surge for stretches of coastline. It's not going to have a lot of localized detail, but it is going to be a really good starting place for beginning to understand your storm surge threat. On the left then, we have another product that then uses your local elevation, still uses the National Hurricane Center forecast, adds a lot more detail. It creates a reasonable worst case scenario. This is also available off the National Hurricane Center website, but it is very, very detailed. Do not use this to drill down to your house level. It's not created for that kind of detail. It is useful for understanding generally what kind of potential storm surge can occur in your community. But at the end of the day, the take-home point is that local officials understand the entirety of the storm surge risk. If they put an evacuation order into place, you need to evacuate. Don't try to get real fancy and zoom down to your local front yard. What about my backyard? What about my neighbor's yard? That's not what this is made for. And then the way we communicate storm surge threat would be through storm surge watches and warnings. Watches 48 hours in advance, warnings 36 hours. That is just basic in effect for areas where life-threatening storm surge is expected.
All right, thank you, Carl. So I'm going to take us home with the impacts. He did a really good job to get you away from the forecast cone in terms of looking at all the impacts instead of just the cone itself. The other thing I want to talk about is the category. Saffir-Simpson scale, we should be familiar with this, from 1 to 5. The lower numbers represent less wind. The higher numbers represent more wind. This is only a wind scale. Much like Carl and I were just talking about on the forecast cone, this says nothing about how much storm surge you're going to have, how much rain you're going to have, that the storm is going to hit you and you're going to be on the right side, that it's going to linger over you for 3 days. This is only based on wind. I'm not saying not to pay attention if it's a 3 or 4 or 5 or a higher number. That's obviously something you want to pay attention to, but this is only related to wind. So for those that have been here for a while, raise your hand if you've heard the phrase, I'm not gonna, right? I'm not gonna cut the grass. No, I'm not gonna leave unless it's a 3. I'm not going to leave unless it's a 2 or a 4. Fill in what number. That is where we can have huge issues in our community. One of our biggest messaging challenges is too much focus on the category and the actual intensity of the storm. It matters. I'm not saying not to pay attention if it's a 3. Oh, Erik said, hey, don't worry about that number. It's just a number. No, it's only part of the puzzle. It's wind. It's important, but it's not the whole puzzle. We've had a lot of just ones. Ophelia, Matthew, Florence down our way. Hermine was just a tropical storm. So it doesn't even have to be a named, a hurricane. 2010 to 2020, almost 200 deaths and almost $200 billion in damage from just ones. So please do not focus on just the category of the storm. The upper right is an image from Florence boat up in the downtown section of New Bern. The lower left is from Category 2, that was Dorian, that is Ocracoke. So the Pamlico on the left and the Atlantic Ocean on the right. Past experience can be a good and bad thing. We talk a lot about Florence in our area. Florence was a non-issue for you in terms of what actually happened. Obviously, you were paying attention to it. You were concerned about it. But if you look on this map, the lower left, 20 to 30 inches of rain. I'm a big sports fan. They talk about sports being a game of inches. Meteorology is a game of miles. If this shifted 60 miles to the north, that's your bullseye rain over Hatteras Village. Do you think there'd be an issue in Buxton if we had 20 to 30 inches of rain? Yes, you got extremely lucky that you did not have Florence. We had a workshop this morning. We were talking about Isabel. It's hard to imagine. It's been 20 years. Imagine how much has changed in 20 years. Imagine, a lot of us were not here 20 years ago. Some of us were. So past experience can be a good thing, but don't just think you've been through it. You might have been, not on the worst side of the storm. Each storm is unique. So past experience can sometimes lead you to think that we don't get storms up here or they're not as bad as they have been in the past. Carl mentioned this, the term anchoring. This is the forecast from Hurricane Dorian. I should remember August 28th because that is my wife and I, our wedding anniversary. This is 2019, so August 28th. And at that point, it was projected to hit Florida. So if you were to look at this forecast on a Wednesday and not pay attention through the weekend, by that Sunday, it had changed. It had already changed by that weekend that it was going to come up the coast and we were going to have to contend with Dorian. September 6th is when it hit Ocracoke, 4 to 7 feet of storm surge. So again, as Carl mentioned, this is the single most accurate forecast. And he didn't just say that because it's a company line. Statistically, we can show you not only track accuracy, but accuracy of changing. Because a forecast is not accurate if you're saying this thing and you're waffling back and forth. But even being the most accurate forecast, it is going to change, especially in that 4 or 5 day time frame when it's far out. Things are going to change. So please check back. We mentioned in the beginning, water is what kills. If you've been to any of these talks, we've shown you this graphic, and you might say, well, Erik, it is 2023. Do you have anything new? Through 2012, it was about 90% of deaths were water-related. Half were storm surge. So the updated information is it's still 80 to 90% water-related. The thing that has gone down a lot, the darker shading of blue is freshwater flooding, and that Carolina blue is storm surge. So we have lowered the deaths with storm surge. Work with local counties like Drew installing storm surge poles. The Hurricane Center and the local offices doing storm surge watches and warnings. So there's more awareness, but it's still water, water, water in terms of deaths. And a lot of it's vehicle related. So never, ever, ever cross a flooded road. Water is extremely powerful. The other point of emphasis, again, don't focus on just a category. Also, don't let your guard down after the storm. We do a tremendous amount of preparation, as we should. Where should you go? What's in your kit? Do you have enough food and water for a week and medicine? When you decide to come back, or it's safe to come back, don't let your guard down. If you have a generator, know how to use it. Don't come back when you're advised not to. Don't put yourself in an unsafe situation. We've had people falling off ladders, dying because of carbon monoxide poisoning, things that are extremely preventable. So do not let your guard down even though the storm is past. So that's how we're going to wrap up is impacts. Instead of focusing on the category, instead of just focusing on that forecast cone, again, that just shows you where the general vicinity the storm should go. You should be asking, are we going to get a lot of rain? What's the storm surge? Oh, it's out to sea. I don't have to worry about it? No. What's the rip current threat? Wind and tornadoes. And this is not something you magically have to search for. It's going to be on the local broadcast meteorologist. It's going to be in our briefings. It's on the website. You don't have to really go searching for this. This will be out there. I already showed you this map, the rainfall flooding for Florence. The point of emphasis here is with our dunes and the lower highways, it doesn't take a lot of rain to cause issues. We see this with summertime thunderstorms. So it's not hard to imagine that we could have flooding issues with a tremendous amount of rain. And it might not be moving like it is in the mountains because we don't have the topography, but we can have a lot of standing water issues in our area. We leave the river flooding one in here because you will evacuate out of the county somewhere else. So you will be dealing with river flooding even though you are in Dare. So when you come back, be extremely safe, respect barriers. We've lost lives from people going around cones. The cones are there for a reason. We have that slogan, when flooded, turn around, don't drown, for a reason. This is what it looks like inland typically. Flowing water, it's extremely powerful. About 1.5 feet of water can lift your vehicle. You don't know if the road is even there. This is very common. This is not a gotcha. Oh, I found the craziest picture from Hurricane Matthew. No, this is common. Water is extremely powerful. It scours out the road. So not only should you not drive through it because it's powerful, you don't know if the road exists. And think about it. Driving at night, you don't know how deep that water is, and you certainly don't know if the road is there. So turn around, don't drown. More than 50% of deaths and flooding are vehicle related. It is not that it's amazing we did not lose any lives in Dorian. It's not just the water coming up. It is people going where they shouldn't in areas they shouldn't be going. So if you could just not cross flooded roads, you'll be much, much safer going forward. Carl talked a little bit about storm surge. We're vulnerable to storm surge. This is a map, again, down our way for Florence, showing some of the issues up the Neuse and Pamlico River. Our area is extremely unique with regards to the Pamlico Sound to our west and the ocean to our right. The point of emphasis with this is we have become more accurate with that forecast, but any wiggle will matter. Any deviation of 20 miles this way or that way will matter. Take Dorian. With that track, it severely impacted, especially the southern part of Ocracoke and the southern part of Hatteras Island. A little deviation to the left, 20 miles, it would have been farther up Hatteras Island. Huge difference where that surge is. And while we can generally tell you where the storm is going to go, we don't know until it's really too late in terms of the wiggle to the left or right. And that can make a deadly decision in terms of storm surge. I cannot emphasize that enough. The water being pushed up our way ahead of the storm, and as the storm leaves, it rapidly coming in on the backside off the sound. Again, those nuances of storm surge are village to village, street to street, and it just depends on what the final storm track is. And those little wiggles in storm track will make a huge difference on what we have where we are. So that's why we aim high with the reasonable worst case storm surge. Not everyone's going to see that value. Somebody will, and we want you to come back and say, hey, we didn't get it as bad as we thought, and we're thankful that you're still alive to say that. Last but not least, rip currents and dangerous surf. Does anybody remember Lorenzo in 2019? So we do have some. So most people think 2019 Dorian, because Ocracoke. We certainly remember that. Lorenzo, 2,000 miles out to sea, Category 5 storm, beautiful stretch of weather in October. We lost 4 people in the Carolinas because of Lorenzo. We didn't lose anybody because of Dorian. So again, Dorian hit Hatteras, or right there. 4 to 7 feet of storm surge. Lorenzo, we didn't even get a cloud in the sky from Lorenzo. We lost 4 people on our coast. So when Carl talks about Franklin, hopefully it continues to stay out to sea. We're not out of the woods, especially if it's nice weather like we predict. It's not ominous. It's not thunderstorms you can see and hear. It's beautiful weather. He mentioned water temperatures are super warm. Great time to go to the beach, not with this distant swell. So please help us message the community. It's not to scare people away, but just to educate them. It's not a threat that you can often see unless you know what you're looking for. So we talked about rainfall, flooding, flash flooding, river flooding. Talked about storm surge for certain. Tornadoes. Any tropical system can produce tornadoes. You don't have to be a meteorologist to realize the thing's spinning, so it's easy to surmise that it could spin up a tornado. This is an EF2 tornado off of Bogue Inlet Pier during Dorian. The reason why I like to put this slide on here is tornadoes can occur with any system. So if we get just a tropical storm or a minimal hurricane and you've made the decision to stay, please make sure this is all charged up and you've got the government alerts on. You'd have to get in there and turn it off if you don't want it. That you have a NOAA weather radio, that you're signed up for OBX alerts, that you have multiple ways to get warning so that since you decided to stay, that you can get into an interior room and seek shelter. These often happen very quick and with very little notice. You're not going to have 20 minutes of lead time that's coming. They're quick spin-ups that happen, and they can produce enhanced areas of damage. The other point of emphasis is they can occur as soon as the first outer rain bands reach us. Remember the map Carl was showing you, the forecast cone. Very good at showing you where the general direction is. Very good at showing you general intensity. It's going to be a hurricane, a tropical storm, major hurricane. It shows you where the center of the storm will be. Well, a hurricane's hundreds of miles across. So the first outer rain band that reached our coast with Dorian produced an EF2 tornado. So if you make the decision to leave, leave. If you make the decision to stay, stay and hunker down. You shouldn't be traveling around when these first outer rain bands come because we can get tornadoes as soon as they reach the coast, not just when the center arrives. Last one I accidentally deleted, but wind is certainly something we pay attention to. The point of emphasis with wind is usually statistically on that graph, it's less than 10% of deaths are wind related. So it's water, water, water. We don't want to diminish wind. Certainly causes issues with communication, power, and things like that. But statistically, water, 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 whether it's storm surge, rip currents, or flooding. So when we get to this point, sometimes we've done this talk for years. I kind of feel defeated because we have a lot of things to think about, right? We live in an awesome area. That's why people continue to move here. We're blessed to live in an area that is fantastic. But with it comes responsibility. And with that is, what can you do now? As much as people like to tease us, we have zero control over the weather. If we did, I would make it like this every day. Snow at Christmas, nice picturesque scene, and nice weather when I want to go outside and play and stuff like that. So we can't control the weather, but you can share this information. You have control over that. You have zero control over what Franklin's going to do over the next 7 days, but you do have control over actually working on your hurricane kit, saying, you know what, it's late August, you're right, I haven't done anything yet. I can go out and get some water. I can make those preparations. You do have control over paying attention to not focus on the category, to focus on all of the impacts. So we do have a lot of control. As much as we'd like to shut down North Carolina and keep all the storms away, we can't do that, but we do have control over actually preparing for it. So at this point, we'd like to take, if you got any questions, my email's at the bottom, mainly because we like to do forums like this where you are, churches, schools, in front of any group you can think of, to get the message out. We really appreciate you coming on a very nice Wednesday afternoon to join us. Share this message with a neighbor, somebody that couldn't make it. We will have this recording posted in numerous places, including YouTube, I think the public access channel as well. So you're going to be able to share this and reiterate this. And take it serious. Again, it's a great area to live in, but it comes with responsibility that we should be preparing each and every year so that if the storm comes, we're ready to get on out of here, or we've got a hurricane kit and we're ready for it. And yes?
Slides you showed
back
to back that I thought were really powerful.
Yes.
One was the water going across the road.
Yes.
And this one, and then you showed this one. And I thought that was a really powerful message. I've never seen that before, with the water across the road, and then you took away the water showing this.
Yeah.
And I think if you got that out more, it really sends a strong message about driving through the water.
I appreciate that, because when we were making this presentation, we like to try to adjust it to be local as much as possible, and this is inland. So at first I'm like, well, maybe we should take it out. It's not Outer Banks specific, but I left it because of what you just said. I like to watch people's faces. I like when other coworkers present, because I like to watch like what gets people thinking, what are people paying attention to, and a lot of times when we show that, there's a gasp or you can see it on their face. So we try to leave that in there, not to scare anybody, but that's reality. That is not, that's reality.
Like I said, I've never seen that back to back like that.
I appreciate that feedback.
I mean, that is the reality.
That's reality.
You never realize that that's what actually could be what's under the water.
Yes.
You assume there's road there.
Yeah.
When maybe there's not.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate that feedback. Positive or negative. The negative doesn't have to be in front of everybody, but all jokes aside, we have changed stuff through the years, more to the point, more about messaging. The science is there. We're going to continue to try to make the most accurate forecasts, and we'll always do that. But we're really trying to work on our messaging, that you understand what our products mean, and that you know how serious water is with hurricanes. So we're really trying to focus on that, and that's based on feedback. So, stuff like that we really appreciate. All right, anything else? All right, well, we appreciate you joining us. Those resources will be made available afterwards.
I just want to say